Hello everyone. We have seen in the previous videos what is meant by guidance, what is meant by counseling, how guide and counselor will help to solve their problems or to make them able to solve individuals' problems. Uh, we have discussed about the educational guidance and counseling also. So, as we know that each and every time only counselor and guide person only is not important, but at the previous stage of the problem or for the small problems, teachers also can take initiative and can help the individual or help the students to solve their problems. So we will see uh, in this video about what is the difference between counselor and a teacher. As we know that teacher also will be able to help students to solve their problems or to make them able to solve their own problems, and if the problems are acute or chronic and if there is a need of counselor, then teacher will refer that child to the counselor and counselor will help the child to solve his problem. So we will see here difference between counselor and teacher. So first point is that the counselor needs to know the pupils in terms of specific problems, frustrations and plans for the future. Counselor will focus on the specific problems. If the students are having any problems through frustrations or the plans for the future of the child, and teacher needs to know the pupils so that educational objectives are obtained and normal growth process is encouraged. Here teachers focus is on the educational objectives. Teacher will always focus on how to achieve those educational objectives. As counselor is focus on specific problems of the child, here teachers will focus on the attainment of educational objectives. The subject matter of the interview is unknown to the counselor and sometimes unknown to the counselee. As we know that in the process of counseling, various interviews are conducted. At that time, the counselor also is unknown about the subject matter of the interview because they have to find out the exact problem of the counselee. So the subject matter is unknown to the counselor as well as counselee, but the subject matter outcomes or objectives to be obtained are known by the teacher. Teacher is always focused on attainment of the objectives. So the subject matter is known for the teachers and subject matter is unknown for the counselor. Next point, the counselor is responsible for helping the counselee resolve his own personal problems. So the counselor has the responsibility for the welfare of the counselee. As we know that counselor is responsible for solving the problems of the students. They will focus only on the problem solving and they are responsible for the welfare of the counselee or for the welfare of the student or pupil who is having problem. But in case of teacher, the teacher is responsible for the growth towards objectives partially determined by social order. The teacher has the responsibility for the welfare of the culture. We know that teacher is also having responsibility of the welfare of the students. At the same time, teachers as having responsibility for the welfare of the culture as well. For this, the social order has decided few objectives and teacher will focus on those objectives and counselor will help the individuals to solve their problems and for the welfare of the students. Counselor starts with an individual relationship and moves to the group situation for greater efficiency. As we know that counseling is always one-to-one, individual relationship. Sometimes it will be of group activity, group process. That's why counselor starts with an individual relationship and moves to the group situation. But teacher starts with group relationships, as we know that teacher always teach to the groups and individual contacts grow out of and return to group activities. We know that teachers always teach in a class where there is a group of students, and through that teaching the individual contacts will grow, and again teacher will return to the group activities. But counselors role is that they have to tackle with individuals, those who are having problems. The counselor is responsible for only one person at one time, and teacher is responsible for many children at one time. We know that counseling is one-to-one activity. That's why counselor is responsible for only one person at one time, the person who is having problem. And teacher is responsible for many children at one time. Teacher is teaching to a class and responsible for that particular group of students at one time. The counselor works with and through any people. Referral resources and techniques are of considerable importance. As we know that counselor works with through any people, those who are having problems. According to the problem, counselor will refer to the various resources and techniques. The teacher carries on most of her work directly with the children. As we know that teacher knows this particular group of children, and they will carries out most of her work directly with those particular children. The counselor uses interviewing skills as the basic technique. In the counseling, interviews used as basic technique, required technique, through which counselor can collect the data which is required to solve the problem. The teacher uses skill in group technique, while interviewing skills are used less often. Here we know that in teaching, teacher use group techniques. They will not go with the interviewing skills. Only in few cases or very less often teacher will use interview technique. The counselor uses test, records and inventories to discover factors relating to a problem. The results are used for therapeutic purpose. Here, all the test, records and inventories are used by the counselor to discover factors relating to a problem. As we know that counselor is tackling a student who is having problem, to find out the factors relating to that problem, counselor will use various tests, records and inventories. The results are used for therapeutic purpose. Means the result of these test, records and inventories will be used for the therapy to solve the counselor's problem. The teacher uses test, records and inventories to assist the instructional process. Here, teacher will use test, records and inventories for the educational progress of the child, of the students. The counselor has no tools which are used with all the counselors. As we know that in the counseling process, various tools and techniques are used, but these tools and techniques varies from individual to individual according to their problems. Counselor must first help the counselee discover their problems and their causes and then apply individually appropriate sources of assistance. After identifying their problem, counselor will use various tools and techniques to help them to solve their problems, to assist the counselee. The teacher has many tools, curriculum outlines, books and workbooks, visual and auditory aids to increase her effectiveness. As we know that teachers use all these uh, tools, curriculum outlines, books and workbooks, visual and auditory aids to increase her effectiveness in teaching, to help the students to learn. But here, counselor has no tools which are used for a group. He has to focus on the individual's problem, and based on that, he has to select which tools and techniques can be effective one. The counselor needs information used by the teachers, information about occupation, training, institutions, colleges, apprenticeship programs, placement resources, social service agencies, diagnostic and clinical instruments. Counselor needs all this information. If he is having all this information, he will be able to give this information to the students, which will help them in solving their problems and in to progress in their life. The teacher needs to increase her information relating to instructional activities. As we know that teacher has to increase her information or her knowledge in her subject, in her instructional activities, in her skills. The most effective counseling comes from a voluntary association. The counselee must want help and must feel that the counselor can be helpful. For the counseling process, to make the counseling process effective, voluntary association or rapport between counselor and counselee is very important. The counselee must want help. The individual who is having problem is in a need of help and must feel that the counselor can be helpful. He should have faith in counselor, and in that faith, and if that rapport is developed between counselor and counselee, then the counseling process will be effective one. The teacher has a complete relationship. Children are required to be there. As we know that the rapport will not be developed with each and every student in the class. It should be developed, but there are certain limitations. But in counseling process, rapport between counselor and counselee is very, very important. Here, the teacher has a complete relationship. Children are required to be there. Students should be there, and teacher will teach them. Teacher will try to understand them, and slowly the rapport with all the students will be developed. The clients are disturbed with frustration. They are often characterized by emotional tensions, previous disappointments, and lack of confidence. As we know that when a client is approached to the counselor, they are having some problem. They are disturbed ones, and such people only will approach to the counselor. But in case of teacher, the teacher deals with the children, majority of whose adjustments are happy and satisfying. It's not necessary that the students are having problem. The teacher will deal with the students or with the children who are satisfied and happy. But counselor will always deal with the individuals or students or counselees who are having problems. The counselor is concerned with the counselee's immediate problems and choices, but she is also interested in helping the counselee develop working long-term plans. As we know that when the individual or student is having problem, then only they will approach to the counselor, and the counselor is also concerned with the counselee's immediate problem and choices. Whatever problem they are having at this stage, that is the main focus. They are concerned with that problem, and they will make sure that in future also the counselee will be able to take his own decisions, and he will be able to try to solve his own problems. The teacher is concerned with the day-to-day growth. They are focused, their planning is there according to plan only. They are concerned with the day-to-day activities and day-to-day growth. The skillful counselor tries to develop many of the abilities used by a wide variety of highly technical specialties: psychiatrist, clinical psychologist, occupation information specialist. So, counselor will always try to develop his abilities in all this which is required for the counseling process. The skillful teacher tries to develop many abilities which increase their instructional effectiveness. Teacher always try to develop her knowledge, his or her knowledge in her subject, as well as the development in that particular subject, updated knowledge about that subject, and the skills to transfer that knowledge to the students. So teacher always try to develop abilities which increase their instructional or their teaching effective. So all this is about the difference between teacher and counselor. So the teacher also always will be able to help the child to solve their immediate problems. If the problem is chronic and acute, then only teacher will refer that child to the counselor, and then counselor will take care of that particular problem and how to solve that problem. So thank you students for your patient listening.